So I want to talk about the beginning of your pro career. And I mean, I say your pro career, it was back in the 70s and 80s when you first started, but you pretty much, as you said, got your first bike at 16. Your dad gave it to you, built it, and somehow built the perfect engine without being able to see the thing, and then still made it run like the clappers. So how did that go? Just how was the first few years as a pro driver / successful rider?
Well, I don't know about pro. I was working as a mechanic. Originally started working at TB Oliver's in Denham, along with Steve Hislop. So multiple TT winner and everything else. And yeah, absolute world class. I think Rob McElhenney, who ran the Yamaha team that Steve raced for a little while, would describe him as a flawed genius. On his day, yeah, but something very, very special. But I suppose in some ways I'm not that dissimilar to myself, because if all of the ducks didn't line up, it wasn't right, and he wouldn't do as well as he should do. And I kind of adopt that approach where I would say even today, and even going back to the 1980s, if all of the ducks lined up, look out. I would have a go, and I would have a go at, it didn't matter who it was, whether it's Carl Fogarty or whoever it was, I would be in there and I'd be in the mix. Yeah. But if it wasn't right, I wasn't right. I wouldn't push the bike to the 110% that you needed to do to be able to get to the front of some of that kind of stuff. So the results went up and down a little bit, I think, when I sort of hit international level and did some of the British Championship stuff, what is now BSB, and not quite as consistent as you'd want to be, but that was where I was trying to do everything myself. And I think where you can't, you've got to surround yourself with good people. And it's something that I often say is, if I could go back and do it again, what would I do different? Yeah, I would employ a top-notch mechanic to come and help me and do a lot of the stuff for me. And
so you were going down as a proper one-man team at the weekend to the meet, engineer, mechanic?
It was. Yeah, that was it. I had some mates that would come with me that would come and help, and as he said, and away we'd go and race. So, and this is where it progressed from, as he said, the vintage bike racing. Alan Duff has given me a bit of sponsorship with some Yamahas, and then ultimately Dave Christie, who ran a driving school, ex-chief of police for Fife and somewhere else. When he took retirement, he set up a driving school, teaching people to drive. So he had dozens of cars in Glenrothes, Kirkcaldy, Dunfermline, all around about, all teaching people to drive. Everybody paid cash back in the day. And Davey was always quite happy to help me out with buying bikes, spares for bikes, and all of the rest. To be honest, to this day, I still owe Davey Christie so much. And I'm so grateful for what he did for me, because without it, I could never have done it. It's just, it would never have happened, where he threw an obscene amount of money at bike racing and helped out quite a few different people. And as I said, that was where it sort of progressed a bit. But I was still doing an awful lot of stuff on my own. I had a guy, Hamish Jamieson, his name was, originally from Shetland, did an apprenticeship in Edinburgh as an engineer, but he ended up helping me. He was good friends with my cousin Graham. Again, another Taylor with another history. He was Scottish production bike champion, and ever so, as I said, just another Taylor that raced. So lunacy runs deep in the family, I can tell you.
I think you're confusing lunacy and success there, because it sounds like you're all if you said you're consistently ploughing it into the tyre wall at first lap, I got, you're all lunatics. But
yeah. I mean, people say, oh, these guys that race motorbikes, they must all be mad. No, I just think, as I said at the beginning, I'm just a lot of like-minded idiots that all like running around about and having a ball and getting the adrenaline rush and everything else. It's a special group of people, and there's all sorts of reasons that people do it. You're sitting there on the grid, and some people will be there, and you can see they're just about being sick with nerves, like the James Hunt thing, where he was regularly thrown up before a race, and you think, why would you put yourself through that? Why on earth do people do that? But as he said, it's a bit of the buzz afterwards when it's all finished. You can't wait to go and do it all again. And but it says at the gate when you come in, when you get your ticket, when you sign on the entries, motorsport is dangerous. And I think that there's a lot of people that read too much into it. As he said, it's not try to make it too safe, because it'll never be safe. The speeds that you're going, when something goes wrong, and if you're hurtling down Bray Hill at 160 odd mile an hour and you fall off, the likelihood is it's not going to be a good outcome. It's not.
It's going to hurt in some way.
It is. You fall off at Donington going down Craner curves at 120 odd mile an hour, and you're likely going to end up on your backside, sliding up the grass at 120 mile an hour. And provided that you've not landed very awkwardly or you've not hit anything, you're going to pick yourself up and walk away again. You'll have a bit of a gravel rash and a bit sore, but as I said, you've got to minimise the risk. Keep it under control. Don't let your emotions take over and let your inability run away with itself. The throttle works both ways, and it doesn't have to be on full chat all the time.
I feel that's destined to be on a T-shirt at some point. The throttle goes both ways.
It does very much so. So nowadays it's called traction control, where the young kids just whack the throttle back 100% and hope the electronics do it all for you. Going back to, as he said, racing in the 1980s and things, there was no traction control, there was no nothing. Everything was just, as I said earlier, the seat of your pants. If you've got good seat of the pants feel, and with my father and having engines and things that would blow up, I've always been reasonably mechanically sympathetic. So whether it's driving a road car or whether it's racing a bike, you just don't drive it to destruction. When you feel things starting to go wrong, just nurse it a little bit, be a little bit sympathetic with it, and it'll keep going and you'll get the finish. And again, now later in life racing, for sure, I've won races over this last couple of years where I've nursed things. I've been sympathetic to it, and I've gone, you know what? Sometimes you need to lose the corner to win the race, where the young guy's gone whizzing in underneath me and another couple of laps up round the circuit, as he said, he's lying in a heap somewhere. I thought, oh, well, that wasn't going to last. Yeah. And other times you've got to lose the race to win the championship, where you could go somewhere, go to Donington on any one given weekend, and somebody has got it better than you. The bike's better set up. They've not had a shit week at work where everything's all gone wrong, and they've had nothing to do all week other than just train and make sure that they're ready for Donington, and they've rocked up, and they're going to be difficult to beat. And sometimes you've just got to let them have it and take the second. I think the No Limits Championship, I think I finished second. I think it was either 8 or 9 times.
I can tell you right now, I've got it right in front of me, it was 8 times.
8 times. Oh, there you go. So it's the consistency, and sometimes let the other person have it. And I won a few races in it, but at the same time, it was sometimes I had to make smart decisions and just go for it and let them take the race win. So as I said, sometimes you got to lose the corner to win the race. Sometimes you got to lose the race to win the championship. And if you're all gung ho, it doesn't always work.
Exactly. You can't go 100 miles per hour around. Well, not 100 miles per hour is a bad example, but you can't go full throttle around every corner. Is what I'm trying to say.
You can't. No. Sometimes less is more.
Yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with golf. I mean, you probably know who Jack Nicklaus is. Jack Nicklaus, the golfer.
Yes. Yeah. No. For sure. Yeah.
Your mentality is very similar to his. From just the way you're saying it there, it's very much because I remember listening to him, and it was during the Masters, and he went, I looked at the board, and I remember if I was in the lead, I didn't think I need to keep getting further shots ahead. He went, I just know that they've got to push to try and beat me, so I just need to keep making par, and I'm fine.
Yeah.
And it's like, you're very much that. You're very much just, if I just keep going slow, and it's almost like the classic slow and steady will win the race, isn't it?
It is.
Cliches we're getting on.
It is, no, definitely. And I think going back to my late teens, early 20s, when I'm starting to race and things, that I adopted a little bit of a similar approach, but not enough of it. And as I said, where I think over that period of time where I was racing, I was definitely racing against the monkey in my head, where it was loose, telling you all sorts of things. And as he said, willpower, determination, having the ability to switch off to the outside world, to all of the things that was going on at that time. And you can only do that for a set period of time. You can't keep that up. And with lots of events that had happened in the early 1980s, and then I continued racing, and to have the mental capacity to deal with lots of different things that life throws at you. As he said, to compete at that level, when it's not going right, it does become very, very difficult. So now, when I'm coming back and having another go at it, if I'm having a bad day, I'll laugh at it, and I'll just say to my wife, come on, I'm going to go and have a beer and sit down and have a chat, and we'll just so take it on the chin and don't worry about it, and we'll pick the pieces up in the next week, fortnight, or however long it is until I'm out again. As I said, and don't let it destroy you. It's not the be all and end all. It's not going to be MotoGP. We're doing this for fun, and I need to go to work on Monday morning.
That's it. That's the important thing, and I think a lot of people could learn from that in every sport. You've got to remember you're here for fun, and at the end of the day, everybody just goes back to work on Monday morning anyway.
It is, yeah, and some people take it way too serious. I've seen lots of the trophy parents who are screaming and shouting at their kids because they've not tried hard enough or not done what they should have done. And I think over about a 10-year period in my son raced go-karts, I think it was probably only twice, I think, that we really had crossed words where I had sort of said to him, what the hell are you doing? Just, you need to get a grip and sort yourself out, because your head's just not in it. And he kind of had a word with himself and then carried on again. But as I said, not racing myself. As I said, life takes over and all the rest of it. As I said, he won the British Kart Championship, won a European Championship, and finished 5th in the world with stuff that engines and bits and pieces that I had put together and done and managed to run. So as I said, but that's another story in itself. That's fortunately, as I said, he chose to get involved in 4 wheels and not 2. He did have a very short period of time on a motocross bike and did quite well at it, but just it didn't seem to light his fire. So
it sounds like he was all right with 4 wheels as well, to be fair to him.
Yeah, but going back to the trophy parent thing, we were at a schoolboy motocross thing, and he's leading the local club championship, and he had said to me one day about, I've had enough now. I think we'll go swimming or we'll go do something else now. And it's halfway through the day. So I'm loading the bike in the back of the van. And there was a couple of other dads going, where are you going? I said, I'm going home now. I said, I'm going to get his sisters out swimming or doing whatever. I said, so we're going to go and see what they're doing. He says, but you can't let him do that. I said, I can and I will, because if he's not wanting to do it, I said, that's up to him. I said, if he wants to do it, I said, I'll help him do it. But if he doesn't want to do it, I'm not going to force him to do it. It's fun. And just walked away from it. And but some of the people, as I said, go-karting in particular, they're spending hundreds of thousands of pounds on their 10, 12-year-old kids in the space of a year to try and win British championships and all the rest of it. And it is into hundreds of thousands that they're spending, and the pressure that they put on these kids is unbelievable, absolutely unbelievable. I saw the likes of Lando Norris, George Russell, all of these kind of people. They came through the karting world when I was involved in it, but very grounded. The kids wanted to race, they wanted to be there, they wanted to be successful, and they wanted to do whatever it took to try and win. Complete different mindset, and that's why they're in Formula One now. Is because that naturally they had that in them, and that both their parents was keen for them to do well and provided the correct environment for them to do well in. But neither Mark Norris or any George Russell's parents or anyone else, never once did I see them shouting at them, screaming at them, telling them that they've got to do well. They would give them a hug if they did well, and again give them another hug if they had a bad day. And just went through it, and the kids thrived on that. But the ones that were being screamed and shouted at and all the rest of it, they're only doing it to try and please the parents for all the wrong reasons. So it's a strange world, the motorsport game that we're in, and it doesn't matter whether it's cars or bikes. I see a lot of similarities between the two, and I think young kids coming up through the racing world and things, they said, you're right in what you said, you've got to do it because you're enjoying it. It is fun. If it's fun, it's easy, and they will do a lot better at it.
I was going to say, I always played better when I was having fun, so I imagine that's a very transferable experience to everything, especially something like motorsport.
Definitely, without a doubt, it's got to be fun. And as I said, at the age of 58, I'm now having fun, and that's what I do. On a good day, I'll have a go. If I'm having a bad day, I'll go and take the piss out of some of the like-minded idiots that run around in circles with me, and just have a laugh about it. And usually they're much younger than me. Usually end up taking the pee out of me a lot more. But what do they say? If don't give it if you can't take it.
Exactly. If you can't laugh at yourself, you've got no right to laugh.
Yeah, I do regularly. Fortunately, I have to. Yeah, my wife doesn't let me off with it. If I start to get too serious, she'll have a stern word with me.
I feel we must know the same people, because all my friends will never let me get any humble in that.
No,
every week when this goes out, they go, "Are your usual 3 listeners that all happen to live in your same household watching the podcast this week?" Stuff like that. Keep me humble.
Yeah, that's right.
So before we talk about your pro career and all the incredible stuff that you've already alluded to, and we're definitely going to get back in, because like you said, you're winning championships. Like you said, it took you 6 or 7 race meets to find your feet, and then you were just taking victories home as if it was the only thing to do at a race weekend. But before we get into that, I want to talk about the expensiveness of motorsport. Like we touched on it earlier about how people are paying $5,000 to go to a track day and do testing. But so you'll know yourself, like when kids go to karts and then they go to things like that. And I find it quite interesting when because a lot of people get into racing later if they don't do it when they're really young. Because I don't know if you've ever seen it. Top Gear did an episode on it where they gave themselves a budget of a price of golf clubs. I think it was like £900 or something for a price of golf clubs.
Yeah,
and they went racing. Obviously, they didn't do it on bikes, but how would a younger person get into bike racing? Do you do the whole karting route, or?
There's a few different routes to it, and there's a few different trains of thought on it.
Yeah.
The traditional route at the moment is that the kids get into mini bike racing, pocket bikes, on indoor go-kart circuits. So they're riding little, 50, not even 50cc engines. And they're running around there at 5 years old, learning the craft, just learning the lines, working out what the throttle does, working out grip, what they need to do with braking, just racing, elbow to people. And Alan McIntosh, who runs a lot of the kids up in Scotland, he provided a fantastic platform and opportunity for kids to come through that series. So kids that are at the top of the game at the moment, your Lewis Rollo, Roy Skinner, there's a very long list of names, ones that's all came through that route, where as kids they've raced pocket bikes, mini bikes, or indoor go-kart circuits, and then eventually they've then progressed onto slightly bigger bikes. It's a 13, 14-year-old that can run around Knockhill, East Fortune, places like that, and they're allowed loose out with the adults. It's expensive, as you said. It's got the word motor in front of it, which I think should be replaced by must have money. Because
it's a $6,000 price tag.
It is. Anything involving the word motor, you just know it's going to cost you. And there's different ways to do it. I think the CB 500 Championship in Scotland at the moment is one of the biggest entries on the Scottish grid. The CB 500 class within Dave Stewart's Thundersport Championship. I think at Donington there was about 130 CB 500s. All there, all racing, all trying to compete for the top 32 slots on the grid on the A final, and incredibly competitive. And you're Leon Haslam, James Tosland, and again, Ryan Vickers. There's lots of big names that's all come through this CB500 class. Now, even today, you can go and buy a good CB500 for about 1,800 to $2,000.
Right.
Buy the bike. You can then go and race it. Thundersport, you'll need a new set of tyres, you'll need some spares, do bits and pieces, but for a race weekend, it's probably around the sort of 650 quid for your 3 days racing.
Right.
And that's what you will need to be able to go racing. Get the laps in, get the experience. That's the first run on the ladder. So coming from the mini bike series that you would go through, as I said, lad and dad, going to a karting circuit with a small bike in the back of the car, that's what you're there progressing onto. And from there, yeah, just keep shifting the decimal point one place to the right all the time, because when you get into even the British Superbike teams, yeah, you're having to take very, very big budgets to the team to be able to do that. But there is so many different classes, it's diluted it quite a bit. Where back in the day, in the 1980s, I think, where there was a 125, a 250, a 350, and a Superbike class, and if you were in pure racing, that was it. There was nothing else. If you wanted to do something different, you raced a production bike. You bought an LC, which was a road-going 250 or 350 Yamaha, took the lights off it, put some race tyres on it, tweaked it a little bit, and away you went, and you went racing a road bike. So it was a production bike class. But now there is so many different classes. Now, I've always had an interest in things racing, but there's so much of it, I struggle to follow it. So how an average person coming into it can try and make sense of it, good luck to them.
Yeah. Oh, I try, because I'm an advocate for a few sports. I have like a few that are my personal favourites, and even just trying to keep up with 3 or 4, not even to the in-depth level of a diehard for a specific sport, is unbelievable.
Yeah. No, definitely, as I said, but it's so there's a few different routes to get into the motorsport game. I think it's great. I think the paddock life for young kids, where they're all running about there playing at night on their mountain bikes and just come wheelie competitions and all the things to do. It's keeping them off the street. It's giving them an interest and all the rest of it. And I suppose you got to look at the positives. They're going to spend all of their money on motorbikes and stuff, so there's no money for drinking drugs.
Yeah. It's a very good way to look at it. I know my kid's not going to do anything stupid because he's skint.
That's right. Yeah, no, absolutely.
Well, definitely there. Well, if any young listeners get involved, get in your dad and lad car and then get yourself to the CB500 in Scotland. Dave Stewart Thundersport, that's the name. Free promo, yep. Dave Stewart Thundersport.
That's right, yeah.
There we go.
I'm not fussy about what I eat. I think on about food, health, fitness. I wouldn't say I'm a vegetarian. I'll eat as much vegan stuff as I can. If I turn up at somebody's house and they've made me stew and dumplings, I will eat it. But if I can avoid it, I will avoid it. And I would say, from a sports nutritional point of view, the events that I've been racing in, they're endurance events. You've got to turn up there on a Thursday night, do practice on Friday, time qualifying, races, heats on a Saturday, and then you've got to peak at 3 o'clock on a Sunday afternoon. So yeah. You've got to mind what you're eating. You've got to make sure that you keep a constant supply of energy on fuel going in, and keep the levels constant. So yeah, avoid the sugary drinks and all of that type of stuff. And as I said, food like porridge and lots of veggie stuff and things I've seen been much better on. I think going back to when I raced in the 80s, and I was competing at a much higher level, as I said, with world-class people, but my fitness, my nutrition and everything was shocking. Classic case of, I wish I knew then what I know now. Mm-hmm. And listening to some people, and what I've learned with dealing with young kids coming through go-karts, moving into slicks and wings cars, Their parents have had unbelievable disposable incomes available to look after little Johnny, making the transition, as he said, from go-karts into cars. And they've had sports psychologists, they've had, as I said, their own chefs turning up, they've had all sorts of things. And I've watched with interest as to how, what is now Formula One, Formula Two, or Formula Three, how the people in those paddocks now turn up prepared to race. And I think the bike world is still 10 to 15 years behind that. I think the bike, even the guys in the Grand Prix and the British Superbike teams, they're getting there with it, but they're not at the level that some of the Formula car guys are.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I think it's almost I think the Formula, like you say, 1, 2, and 3, they're almost a completely different sport on their own now. Like there's such a difference between everything.
I think the amount of money that's involved, and I did, just to put some figures to it, so the listeners get a feel for the amount of money that these people are throwing at things. People now coming out of the go-kart world, so you're 14, 15-year-old kids moving into Formula 4.
Yeah.
For one day's testing at Donington or Silverstone or wherever it is the team decides to go, they're probably spending approximately £5,000 a day just to run roundabout and do a day's testing in a car. And that's before they pay their sports psychologist to go with them and various other things that they've done. They'll have had a couple of days on a sim somewhere, iZone, places like that, in preparation for the test. And these kids, they've got to turn up, put the backside in the seat of a car, and they've got to perform from lap 1. And you'll understand this from the sports psychology side of it. And sounds a bit pervy, but every single time they go out in the car, they've got to be at the same state of arousal. So it doesn't matter whether they're doing a test, whether it's qualifying, whether it's the first lap of the race, or just a lap on a Wednesday afternoon to test the car. Unless they're all at a constant level, you're either pushing too hard, you're not pushing hard enough. So the cars, the margins within it is so small. So the driver has got to make sure that he is very, very consistent. And the good ones turn up, get in a car, and can knock lap after lap after lap out without even thinking about it. So they'll have sat there in the chair, they'll have been doing visualization, they'll have been doing all sorts of things to make sure that they're properly prepared for it. And that's the level that these guys are at.
All right, so you mean they just have to get in the car and be at that 99 percentile and just go?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Like the cliche of flicking the switch, they just have to be at that from
age 14. Because there's no point in testing and running around unless you're pushing as hard as you're going in qualifying. Mm-hmm. All that you're doing is just reinforcing bad habits, and the car's not reacting, or the bike isn't reacting as well as it's going to do when it's under real race conditions. So you're fooling yourself, and you're just reinforcing bad habits. And it's not the ones that's going to make you go quick. So they say about you've got to be in the zone, and all the things that you do in your practice, you've just got to practice to be in the zone. And when you're in the zone, it all starts to happen just as second nature. And it's instinctive. You don't have to think about it because you've already rehearsed it in your mind 2 or 3 dozen times. The visualizations tricked you into thinking that. And I'm sure you've driven down the motorway somewhere and you've kind of come to your senses and gone, oh, where am I? And you've forgotten the last 30 or 40 miles, but you've never had an accident, you've never had a near miss, and you've never had a problem because unwittingly you've been driving in the zone and you've been doing it at a subconscious level. And you're probably actually doing it a lot better than you would do when you're really thinking about it. So that's it doesn't matter what type of sport it is, that's the level that you're pushing to. So you're doing it instinctively and you've not even got to think about it.
Then you can afford to listen to the guy that's trying to talk to you while you're doing 200 miles per hour around the corner as well.
I am so glad. My wife's often said that to me. She says, oh, I need to get you an intercom. And I've just pulled the face and gone, right, really? I think, how on earth some of the car guys, and I've done it. I've worked there as an engineer for some of the Formula car teams. And this happened with a very, very well-known driver who's at the front end of Formula E now. But engineer comes on the radio to him. He says, you can brake a little harder or a bit later into turn 1.
Mm-hmm.
So the next lap round, the driver comes round and he actually misses the corner completely because the engineers told him that he can brake later in there. But he can't because of all the other things that the engineer doesn't know about. Yeah. And then it snowballs, and then he has to push harder at the next corner to try and make up the time. And by this time he's run wide and he's got his tyres dirty. And then he starts to get frustrated because he's thinking, oh my God, the whole team thinks I'm just not trying hard enough. And it just snowballs. And it all came from that one comment of a misinformed engineer that says, oh, you can brake a bit harder into turn 1. So it's a team effort, all of the stuff in the cars, massive team effort, where once the riders are out on the bike, although there's a massive team effort to get you there, it's up to you once you're on it, you are away.